non è buono. Si deve votare e si deve scegliere il male minore.
Disillusionment swirls among the younger generation of voters, with progressives feeling increasingly alienated from the current political landscape. Recent polls paint a picture of widespread voter discontent as razor-thin margins and swaths of undecided voters hold the power to tip the scales. In this volatile climate, some media outlets have begun to position Trump as the frontrunner, their forecasts casting a long shadow over the upcoming election. But beneath the surface of polls and predictions lies a stark reality. Donald Trump and the GOP present a significant threat to the very fabric of American society, their policies and actions poised to exacerbate numerous critical challenges facing the United States. Trump and the GOP have and will undermine comprehensive education, whitewash history, and slash public school funding. Trump proposed cutting $7 billion from the Education Department's annual budget, including reducing funding for after-school programs. His first full education budget aimed to cut at least 22 programs, slashing $1.2 billion for after-school programs for 1.6 million poor children and $2.1 billion for teacher training and class size reduction. It allocated no money for student support and academic enrichment, affecting mental health services, anti-bullying initiatives, physical education, AP courses, and science and engineering instruction. It proposed halving funding for college work-study programs, ending public service loan forgiveness, and eliminating hundreds of millions of dollars for mental health and advanced coursework, totaling a $10.6 billion cut from federal education spending. Trump also rescinded Obama-era guidance promoting racial diversity in admissions and disciplinary policies in schools. They have and will roll back student protections, making schools unsafe for marginalized communities. Trump and the GOP have and will aim to repeal the Affordable Care Act, ACA, potentially stripping coverage from over 20 million Americans, disproportionately affecting vulnerable populations. They have and will push restrictive reproductive health measures like Texas's 6-week abortion ban and Oklahoma's near-total ban, threatening personal health decisions for millions. They have and will leave mental health services underfunded and inadequate. Trump and the GOP have and will roll back anti-discrimination protections for LGBTQIA plus individuals in healthcare and housing, increasing bias in these areas. The Trump administration rolled back Obama-era policies protecting transgender individuals from discrimination in healthcare. Some Republican lawmakers have proposed legislation to restrict gender-affirming care for transgender youth, such as Florida's attempted ban on gender-affirming care for minors and the successful restriction of transgender youth's access to gender-affirming and other health care in states like Arkansas and Tennessee. They have and will undermine marriage equality, threatening the rights of LGBTQIA plus families. Trump and the GOP have and will deny climate science and roll back environmental regulations. The Trump EPA rolled back over 100 environmental regulations, including emission standards for power plants and cars, and Trump pulled the U.S. out of the Paris Climate Agreement. They have and will increase pollution through deregulation, threatening clean air and water. Trump and the GOP have and will enforce inhumane immigration policies, including family separations at the border, resulting in thousands of children being separated. Asylum caps and policy changes under Trump made it much harder for migrants to seek asylum in the U.S. Let us think for a moment what this would mean for Palestinian refugees. Trump and the GOP have and will oppose significant police reform, maintaining police violence, especially in marginalized communities. The Trump DOJ opposed a draft draft consent decree for Chicago that aimed at comprehensive reform and abandoned the use of consent decrees altogether, reversing Obama-era policies that enforced federal oversight on troubled departments. In 2018, Attorney General Jeff Sessions curtailed the scope of consent decrees, limiting their effectiveness in addressing systemic racial discrimination. The Trump administration also ended a program for the voluntary assessment of police departments and sought to cut funding for community policing and violence prevention programs. They have and will favor punitive prison measures, perpetuating systemic injustices. Trump and the GOP have and will resist raising the minimum wage, keeping workers in poverty and exacerbating inequality. Trump restricted overtime pay eligibility for over 8 million workers and undermined collective bargaining rights by rolling back National Labor Relations Board (NLRB) protections. Trump's administration failed to address the COVID-19 pandemic, with the Occupational Safety and Health Administration (OSHA) not issuing an emergency temporary standard and the CDC allowing exposed essential workers to continue working if asymptomatic. The administration weakened worker protections and safety regulations, such as rolling back coal dust exposure limits and reducing OSHA inspectors to a historic low. Trump stacked the NLRB with anti-union appointees, nominated anti-worker DOL Secretary Eugene Scalia, undermined the ACA by supporting a lawsuit to eliminate protections for pre-existing conditions, and initially opposed legislation to reduce prescription drug costs, threatening vetoes as prices rose over 10% on average, only to later issue an ineffectual executive order on the matter. Trump and the GOP have and will oppose stricter gun control measures, contributing to ongoing gun violence. Throughout his presidency, Trump consistently opposed new regulations and measures to restrict firearm access, vocally criticizing and vowing to veto Democratic-backed bills for universal background checks and assault weapon bans. Under Trump, the Republican-controlled Senate repeatedly blocked gun control legislation, including bills to expand background checks and close the Charleston loophole. The Trump administration rolled back an Obama-era regulation, making it harder for people with mental illnesses to purchase guns. Additionally, Trump's conservative judicial appointments, including 3 Supreme Court justices, resulted in the court striking down his own ban on bump stocks, a decision his campaign stated should be respected. By consistently opposing and obstructing new gun restrictions, Trump and his party have contributed to an environment where dangerous individuals can more easily obtain firearms, exacerbating the nation's epidemic of gun violence and mass shootings. Idealist apathy and partisan abstinence kill people. Our votes can save lives. The re-election of Donald Trump will have consequences not only for the U.S., but for the world. Please vote against Donald Trump in the 2024 presidential election.